All right, welcome back to another episode of Grant's Rant. So, a couple things here before we into the main point of today. We're gonna go through a little bit intro, talk about our last guest. We had Rami from Hit Smart Training. That was a really, really great episode. If you guys haven't listened to that yet, I highly recommend it. But it was also really cool to hear some feedback just from some of the other coaches around, as well as some players even reaching out saying that they kind of got a lot of value from it. So it was cool to see that guys actually had some value from it, and we appreciate Rami being on again as well. That he just had so much knowledge in the field, and it was just really interesting to hear his story too. As we mentioned in the podcast, Rami and I knew one another along with Nard as well. We all played at Wabanzi my freshman year, but then we kind of all split parts after COVID. So he ended up going to DePaul, like he mentioned, and then just hearing about his journey from then was just wild because, like he said, he like self-taught himself the analytics within the blast motion, Rapsodo, all that, and just to see where he's at now is really really cool. And I think he's going to have a lot of success working with hitters and wherever he goes. So that was an awesome podcast. I'm glad that we had him on. As far as guys lined up for the next episode here, we definitely have one more for sure guest lined up with some more offensive side of things. We're still trying to get the kinks out on some of the recording episodes before we kind of go after some bigger fish, I guess. So we tried out the Riverside last time, and I thought it went pretty well. The only problem is that sometimes it records locally. So like some people's Wi-Fi might be worse, and so then if you notice that in that last like 3 minutes of the last episode, Rami ended up actually cutting out, which was unfortunate. Like his voice still came up, but like the visual kind of cut out, which I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if people actually look at podcasts or the Juiced Up Pod when they're listening, or if they just listen. I always just listen, but some people like the visual effects, so we provide both. But so yeah, we're trying to get that stuff kind of lined up still before we kind of get some people on the podcast that it might be our first time meeting. So the next few guests will still kind of be people that we know of well, but also like a couple of them like I have never really met in person, so it'll be cool to hear that as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we got going on for the podcast side of things, as far as guests and past guests. And as always, the recommendations are always open. If you find someone that you think could provide some value on the podcast, feel free to reach out to myself or Maynard. We're really just trying to like share a wide variety of training philosophies mostly, but also like we want to get some business stuff out there as well. So it doesn't even have to be in the training world. If you just know of someone that has a cool story that you think could provide value, we would definitely be interested to having them on for sure. As far as my training stuff goes, so the high school season started up, so it's been a little bit kind of crazy trying to get training in. So myself, I've actually kind of shifted to like a quote unquote in season training program. So I'm really only training like hard 3 days a week. But I'm also running a lot more too. I have this like crazy ambition to do an Ironman within the next year. So my cardiovascular endurance like has not ever been a focus in my life, just because like I never saw the value in it and I just thought it was kind of boring. But that's kind of the training style that I've been going with recently. um, so doing a lot more running. I'm up to 13 miles a week, I think. Yeah, 13 miles a week, and we're trying to increase that like a mile or two every month. So hopefully by end of summer, I'm consistently running like 20 to 25 miles a week. And then once I feel like that's kind of in check, then we kind of go to the next stage, which would be like the biking, which I'm not looking forward to. And then the swimming, which like I've never swam like competitively. So I don't know how that's going to go. We do have a little pool at our complex that's pretty deep. So I think like that'll kind of serve the purpose there. But yeah, training 3 times a week in the weight room, going like a max effort upper, speedish upper day, and then just kind of like a more volume based, a little bit max effort, but kind of more volume based lower body work. Just because I'm getting such a heavy volume of running, so I didn't feel like I needed to go multiple leg days with that. And then really trying to like take advantage of the outdoor workouts too. So um, got outside yesterday. That was a really good workout just because I love being outdoors and like limiting myself to equipment because I feel like you're always finding new ways to train that you might not necessarily find being in a weight room environment. So that was always fun. So especially as the weather gets nicer here in Chicago, it's pouring rain today, but hopefully we do see some nicer weather coming up. I'm definitely gonna be trying to get outside more. So that might even just turn into one day a week in the weight room. Like I'm really just trying to enjoy training and enjoy life with that. But yeah, last little thing here before we get into the main thing. So I have my kind of chart here that I've been going with. I saw originally on Zingler Strengths, one of his posts, he did like a X for every single day for a goal. So my main thing has been 30 minutes of an outdoor workout and then 10 pages of reading every day. And as of today, 10, 20, 30. I think today is day 75. Oh, cool. Day 75 of 10 pages of reading and 30 minutes of an outdoor workout. And so like the value that I've seen from reading has been amazing. And I did this when I was doing 75 hard, and I think that could be a whole Grant rant as well. I'll talk about a little bit here. My thoughts on 75 hard. I think it was good to an extent. And actually, I was just having a conversation with one of the guys, one of the dads that I train at his house, just like a gen pop. All my athletes make fun of me when I say that, but I mean that's what it is, just gen pop training. And his buddy had asked him if he wanted to do 75 hard, and he was talking to me about it, and I was like, yeah, man, like I did it, and I think that it provides a good structure for people that may be lacking that. But I'd argue too that like if you need a program to get you moving to commit to your goals, like it's probably not going to be very sustainable, especially something like 75 hard that's so rigid. Like, like when I was done with the 75 hard, like I'd almost sometimes made me like not like training in a sense because you're like kind of forced to do something every day. I feel like when you put that forcing pressure on some people, it almost turns them away a little bit more. So I think for some people it can provide a good value. But like for example, this guy, like we train 2 times a week. He's already like he's done an Ironman. Like he's inspiring me to do an Ironman. And like, yeah, like he's kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, but like he's a very committed dude. Like I don't feel like he needs something like that. Even myself, when I did it, it was more of just like, can I do this myself? Like I just wanted to challenge myself. But I'd say like the average person, like just pick a couple goals that you want to achieve and kind of go with it from there. I don't really think you need to do this whole crazy program. And I know some people have had like a lot of success and a lot of benefits from that. So like more power to you. Eventually, like you just got to live your life and do what works for you. But just from experience speaking, like, and my wife Hannah did it with me too, and I think she kind of felt the same way of like it was good for a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, it's like you can't. It's like it's not sustainable. Like you're telling me you don't ever just want to have a nice drink or something like that. You don't want to enjoy a slice of pizza. Like today, it's piss pouring rain. Like I gotta go get my run in, but like I'm gonna wait until the rain kind of cools off. Like I'm not gonna go run in the pouring rain just to say that I'm mentally tough. Like things like that, man. It's like it's not realistic in my opinion. And if it, honestly, sometimes it's just a show thing. Like, oh, I did 75 hard. Look at me. Like, congratulations. Like, move on with life. Like, it's not that cool. But yeah, that's kind of my rant on 75 hard and just like all those lifestyle programs. But with that being said, one of the requirements was the 10 pages of reading. And I fell off that big time after I stopped 75 hard. Like when I did 75 hard, I think I read close to like 7 to 10 books, which is like the most I've ever read in my entire life. And that was literally because like I had to read 10 pages a day. And one of the books that I read was Atomic Habits, and he talked about just like setting small goals. So like even though you're only reading 10 pages a day, some days that might be 40 pages. And like because you're starting with a small goal, like you're only going to want to try to do more eventually. So I've definitely gotten back into the 10 pages of reading a day. If there's one structure that I want to keep, it's definitely that. I've seen so much value in just like reading a variety of things. And I don't really enjoy fiction books. Like most of the stuff that I'm reading is stuff that I can apply to day-to-day life, whether that be a nonfiction, a biography, or something, or business style. Something that I can learn from. But even like if that is you, like you enjoy fiction, I think that just carving out that time for yourself where you're reading, you're not scrolling on social media, like you're educating yourself, like I think that's only going to provide value. And yeah, it's just a good thing. So that's kind of what my takeaway was from 75 hard. Like if there was one thing I would say to people, like it gets you reading, I guess. So there's always benefits with something. Like there's going to be, understand that there's going to be negatives in everything you do, but how you find the positives is kind of the most important there. All right, so we'll get into the main point here. The main point I want to talk about especially with high school season in full swing. A lot of guys opened up this week or this wherever I'm filming this, like it's opening week, and then by the time this is released, guys will probably have 3 to 4 games under their belt. And so for me as a player, very rarely did I start off strong. Like I think this for a lot of offensive hitters, like it's tough to kind of get in a groove of things early. I would argue sometimes, like when I did start off strong, I'm like almost kind of freaking out because I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to start out this hot because that's just a game of baseball. Like, you're gonna have hot streaks and you're gonna have cold streaks. But I think a lot of hitters right now might be kind of in that cold streak. First of all, understand that that's normal. Like, you haven't probably seen a live at bat in months, and also just like the nerves too. Like a lot of guys, senior year, like you want to have a great year. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Um, but all that stuff is like it's normal. Like, understand that it's normal. And I think the main thing that I want to talk about with the mental game, I made a post about this too. Um, with like a swipe through. So check that out on Instagram. Is this idea of, like, I think a lot of coaches think that the mental game is like controlling your emotions or keeping your emotions in check at all times and basically just being like stone cold, being present and being in the moment. And I think that, yes, I think that has value. I think you need to be in the moment. You can't let the moment get too big, all those cliche terms, right? But I think sometimes, like a lot of those athletes, then they suppress their emotions. I know that was me a lot of times. Like, I didn't want to like go crazy if I had a go ahead home run or a go ahead single to put us ahead in the seventh, like something crazy like that. Or if I made a great play defensively, like I kind of want to just be like, yep, done that before. And I think for some guys that helps, but I don't know, like there's just like this new approach to the game, like, or it's like the new approach to the game is like pimp everything, right? So like I'm all for pimping home runs, like 100%. Like, enjoy the game. Pimping home runs makes baseball great again. But I think there's still like that old style of coaching that's kind of fading out, but like still in the new wave, where they're like, you need to stop pimping home runs, like act like you've done that before, act like you've been there before. And it's like, what is that actually doing? Like, does it really matter? Like, you watch some of these best players, like this is their job, and they're training their entire life for perhaps that moment that they get the job done, they get the outcome that they're looking for, and we're supposed to just tell them that they can't celebrate. Like, that makes zero sense. And so then you look at these kids, it's like, I understand that the average high school player is not Shohei. No one's Shohei Ohtani, right? Like, no one should, be as confident as Shohei Ohtani. But it's like, you watch some of these kids go through their at bats, and it's like the confidence level is dwindled after one at bat because they strike out swinging. Coach comes in, they're like, "Hey, on to the next one. Like, forget about it, move on." And it's like, yes and no. I think that, of course, you need to move on. You can't bring an at bat out to the field with you. But I think every athlete knows that. So it's like, understand that it's okay to like feel pissed off in the moment. Like, you don't have to try to suppress those emotions. Like, that's normal. Like, you're gonna strike out, you're gonna hit a bomb. Like, the video that I used was like the guy. I think this guy's like a pretty popular on YouTube, and like I don't have any beef with people, but I just was looking up the mental side of baseball on YouTube, and I saw this video that popped up, and I was like, your mental game sucks. It's like, well, for starters, that's a great thing to say to a kid that's looking for a mental game. Like, you're going to tell him that his mental game sucks. And then it's like, here's why. Don't stop hitting with your emotions. It's like, then he goes on to say that because you're hitting with your emotions, like, he doesn't care if you hit a home run the at bat before. And I threw in Drew Gilbert absolutely demolishing a baseball and pimping the crap out of it. It's like, you do care if you hit a home run in your at bat before, like whether or not you want to say it, you care. And I was like, I don't care if you strike out. And it's like Bo Jackson cracking the bat over his head. This is the clip that I used. And it's like, you do care about those things. So it's like, as a hitter, I cared about what I did the at bat before, whether or not I showed it. Like, it was there. Like, I knew if I was coming up to the plate, I was 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. Like, man, that fourth at bat's going to be a grind versus I'm 3 for 3 with 2 doubles and a bomb. Like, I'm feeling good, right? So it's like, understand that like the whatever happened before is still there. Like, it's still in the back of your mind. You're going to think about it, right? And so I think a big thing that can help is journaling your thoughts. And I'm going to kind of break down how I utilize a hitting journal. But before I get to that, I think a lot of people are going to either hear this message or they're going to see a clip that I put on Instagram, and they're not going to listen to the entire podcast, and they're going to just hear me talking about like, oh, like, make sure you play with your emotions, play with your heart on your sleeve. Like, if you're not cussing out your coaches, you're not going after them in the dugout. Like, I saw that clip the other day on Twitter, and it's like a coach or a player comes in, he probably just gave up like a 4 or 5 spot, And the first thing that he does is he comes in his coach and he's like cussing out his coach, yelling at him, like, what are you doing? Basically being like pissed off that the coach is making the wrong pitch calls. Like that is not, playing with emotion. That's just being immature. Like there's a difference between playing with emotion and playing like with the mentality that you're trying to win versus like just being an immature kid and not taking ownership for the fact that you just gave up a 5 spot. It's not the coach's problem, like calling the wrong pitches. Like, regardless if the pitch is wrong, like you probably didn't execute the pitch that was called. So it's like, understand that like there's a difference between playing with the emotions, like playing with your emotions intact, I guess would be a better word for it, versus just like blatantly blaming everything that goes wrong or being that guy that like you hit a line drive piss missile and it gets caught and you're coming back in and you're pissed because you just wanted to hit to drive up your average and you're smashing helmets everywhere. Like that's not emotion. That's just being immature. So like understand that difference before we kind of progress with like what it actually means to like have a good mental game, have a good feel of your emotions, right? Feel. I think that's just the best way to. Sorry about that. I think that's the best way to describe it is just feel. So basically, any hitter that's worked with me before or just like talked with me about hitting, like I've told them, okay, well, what are you doing in between at bats? Are you journaling down your thoughts, right? I'm going to kind of explain how I did it, and then I can kind of give a couple advices for guys that may not want to go that extreme. So this was a tactic that I probably picked up my sophomore year in high school. I forget. I think it was one of my like teammates that showed me, or maybe one of my travel ball coaches. But like I kept it with me pretty much through high school, even a little bit freshman year of college, and then after that I kind of stopped. But I came back to it around junior or senior year of college in the fall. But the main thing like that I wanted to see was like how pitchers are pitching me because in high school you don't have a scouting report, right? Like in college you kind of know what the guy has done before you or how he's faced other hitters. You have a little bit of a report, right? But when you're playing the same teams in your conference, like the only report you really have is either from the previous year or like how guys have pitched to you in the past, right? So I felt like this could give me a good kind of baseline of that. Then also just to see like this game I went 0 for 4. What was I thinking that day? Like what was I kind of feeling in that bats? Was I swinging at the right pitches? That's a huge thing. Sometimes, like I think guys get themselves out because they're swinging at the wrong pitches. And then I was also having a conversation with this guy the other day who was in game, like he was struggling and like he was getting them plus counts, but it's almost like he's being too selective. I'm like, dude, like in that situation when you're struggling, like almost chase, like have the approach to chase a little bit. Like once you continually can like start getting some barrels, then maybe we hone back the aggression. It's like, okay, 2-0, maybe I'm not swinging at that pitcher's pitch. Maybe I'm letting that off because I have a little bit of more feel of what I'm trying to look for. But like, I don't know, like in that situation, man, like me taking a 2-0 strike slightly off the black, non 2-1, and then I get another one that's like slightly off. It's like, just go, like just go at that point, right? So like that's what this hitting journal is I break it up into 4 quadrants. I'm gonna try to like post a clip of this on Instagram with a little bit more kind of better artwork. But essentially I break this up into 4 quadrants, right? So I have hitting journal and I go like a 4 quadrants. So in the top left here, what I'm doing is I have the strike zone, right? So this is where I'm actually tracking the pitches that are thrown to me. And I would do this like in between at bats. Like I just have a journal with me and like right after my at bat, assuming I wasn't the last out, I then I would just do it in between innings. But like if I got out or if I got into the dugout, just so it was fresh in my mind, I would just quickly chart where that pitcher pitched to me in that at bat, right? So I do like X for fastball, square for changeup, and then like a circle for off speed. I didn't get too particular. Like you could probably break it up 4 seam, 2 seam, cutter, slider, but it's like for me, it's just like something fast, something slow, whatever had spin. Like that's just kind of how I kept it. And then I would chart that like to the best of my ability, right? Like it's not going to be 100% accurate, but like let's say first pitch was here, like a little bit middle in, I'd put a fastball there. And then next pitch was out, change up, I'd put it out there, so on and so forth. And then let's say the pitch that I hit, so let's say I hit a fastball away, right? So I would just kind of chart it right there, and then I'd actually circle that because like that's the pitch that I swung at. And so on this next one, what I did is I have my bats. So assuming I get 4 ABs a game, I tried to make them, I would make them different colors. So I'd have AB1's brown, AB2 is blue, AB3 is like a pen, and then AB4 is a pencil. And so then what I would do is when I was charting in this first one, I would coordinate or correlate the at bat with the color. So like for my first at bat, everything that I'm charting is brown. For my second at bat, everything that I'm charting is blue. Right. So like just getting like seeing how pitchers are pitching me and what at bat and seeing like even in game, right? Like I'm like, okay, I'm on my third at bat. My first two at bats, like he's throwing me a middle and fastball every single time. Like have the intent to hammer that. Or my first at bat, he threw me a fastball, I crushed it. Second at bat, he started me off with an off speed. Okay, maybe I'm thinking off speed there. So like getting into that like habit of how to progress through an AB, this has really helped me. And then on that bottom third quadrant, what I would do is I'd do the same thing, right? So I'd label the at bats based on the color, and then it's just a quick like what I did in that at bat. So let's say AB1, I'd write the AB AB number one, I'd write the count. So let's say it was an 0-1, I'd write the pitch type that I swung at. So let's say 0-1 curveball and then single to left. So I just write 0-1 curveball, single to left. Number two, let's say I struck out. Whoops. Let's go 2-2, and then let's go fastball high. Go 2-2, fastball high, chased. Something like that. And that's where I would kind of chart the ABs. And then at the end, this was probably don't have to do this, but this was just for me because high school stats are always whatever. You don't keep them. So I just write what I did on the day. Maybe I went 2 for 4 with an RBI. Write that in there. And then thoughts / reflection. This would be more of a general, like how I felt that day. This one before might be a little bit more feelings during the at bat, right? So like on the second one, it's like 2-2 fastball, chased high. Don't be an idiot and swing at the high fastball. Like have a little bit of better approach in that. Whereas the thoughts and reflection, just kind of like 2 or 3 quick bullet points on how I'm feeling that day. And this was the quadrant that like if I'm going back, like let's say I'm kind of struggling and I consider this journal day like a good day, I'm going to go back and look at those thoughts and reflection and be like, okay, well, what was I thinking that day? Because a lot of times my swing's the same, whether I'm 0 for 10 versus 7 for 10 or 7 for my last 10. But it's just like the thoughts that I was having that day might have varied a little bit, right? So maybe this day was like, I got my A swing off 95% of the time, meaning like when I got my pitch to hit, I got my A swing off and I put the ball in play. I think that's a big thing. A lot of guys like that I've seen recently, it's like we're getting into the plus count and then we're either taking that fastball that's right there or we're swinging and we're missing, which like that's not a bad thing, but like understand that like when you get your pitch to hit, like what are you doing to capitalize on is a huge thing. So maybe this day it's like I was 95% of getting my A swing off and putting the ball in play. Whether or not I got a hit on that, maybe I went 0 for 4 on hits, but like I was 4 barrels and I swung at all the pitches that I want. Right. It's like that's a big thing. Or maybe it's just like I felt good that day. Like I felt confident going in the box. I had a little bit of like swagger playing the game, like write that down. Or maybe it's like you had a bad day, right? So it's like, what were you doing that day? Well, I was chasing pitches out of the zone, or I wasn't being aggressive in plus counts, or I wasn't doing things well in situational hitting, right? So like got in second, less than 2 outs. Did I have the intent to switch places with him early, or was I just kind of giving myself up early and just trying to punch a ball the other way, right? Like understand that the situation is going to be dictated on the count, right? So like guy on second base less than 2 outs. My intentionality for that in a plus count meaning 0-0, 1-0, 2-1, 3-1, even 3-0 if you're a good hitter. Like in those counts, my role is less about just getting the runner over. I'm trying to score that runner, right? Like I'm trying to switch places with him or get him to score, right? Maybe now that I have 2 strikes, like depending on what your role is as a hitter, maybe now I'm just trying to punch the ball the other way, right? But I think a lot of times, like these coaches and like these high school coaches sometimes, and even like me sometimes, like I get into the habit of like telling guys like, make sure we do the job today, do the job. It's like no, like the job is going to dictate based on like the count. Like I don't necessarily think a good AB 0-0 is guy on second less than 2 outs. I get an 0-0 fastball down the middle, and I kind of just give myself up and punch the ball the other way, and then he moves to third. It's like maybe depending on the score and depending on how we're swinging it that day, but it's like kind of sell out 0-0. Like get yourself a chance to get an RBI there. Give yourself a chance to put the team ahead. Yeah, now you get to 2 strikes. Now we're probably less about doing that, and then now we can do get the job. And so it's like kind of progressing as a hitter. So that's kind of how I approached my hitting journal. And so what I would do is I just got like a very cheap journal from Walgreens. And I wish I still had, I don't know where it is, but I had probably a whole page, like a whole booklet full of just at bats from high school, like, doing that exact same thing, charting in the dugout. Um, and dude, it was so helpful, especially in high school, because like when we did play that team again, it's like coaches don't usually have a scouting report, or they just like don't care to have a scouting report. But it's like if I'm facing the same arm, it's like that's my scouting report. That's kind of why I backed off a little bit on it in college because um like we had scouting reports, but like I kept it kind of for the most part in JUCO because we didn't have scouting reports. And then I remember picking it back up again in the fall, either junior or senior year, because again, it's just the fall and you're just facing inter squads, so you don't really have scouting reports there either. But that like it's so valuable, and it's like if there's one thing that I think could really, really just change an athlete's career, it's getting a little bit more tuned in with the mental side of hitting. Because notice that everything I said right there was nothing mechanical. Like nothing was like, am I getting my foot down on time? Am I getting my hands back? Like it's just understanding the game. Like you watch a lot of hitters, and I loved how Rami said this in the podcast, how like the best hitters are the best compensators, meaning like they do something that's not optimal to the eye, but they can make up for it one way or another. Like that is how a lot of hitters make up for themselves, is just having a really good understanding of an approach and having a really good feel of the game and like how they're trying to progress through at bats. So like that's how I did it. I'm not saying that that's how you have to do it, but I do think that like even if you don't take the approach of like charting at bats or like charting where the pitchers pitch for you. And honestly, I'd maybe say like stay away from that to start because I think that could get a little bit too technical, especially if you do have a passive approach, because then it's like you're trying to like pick up things that you probably don't need to even worry about right now. But what I would do is start with at least like a 1 through 4 of like what did I do in this at bat? Like what was a pitch, right? Like, let's say it was an 0-1 fastball. Like what did I do on that? Did I chase? Did I get a good swing? Like something like that where you're just kind of charting ABs and you're giving yourself some time to reflect on your at bats. I think that's a huge thing a lot of high schoolers don't do. Even like college hitters, right? Like we have a good game and then we just kind of roll into the next day. Like we don't actually think about like what made that game for me good. And a lot of times it's just like you got lucky that day. And that very well could be, and there might not be a whole lot of reflection there, but there is a good chunk of times where it's like you were doing something and maybe if you don't sit down with your thoughts and kind of write those things down, you might not pick up on those things right away. Like if you're just rolling in the game after game. And as far as like the idea of like being in the moment and slowing the game down, I think coaches love to say that, but then never give like actual practical insight on how to do that. They might just say like, oh, like take some time for yourself before the game and be with your thoughts. Like, sure, that helps. But like doing something like that, like that's intentional. Like you're intentionally taking a few minutes, whether that be after the at bat. And I would like, and if your coach has like a problem with that, I mean, whatever. But like, I would like try to do it right after you're at bat as much as you can because I think you're still going to get value out of it, like doing it after the game. But just like writing that down, it takes 30 seconds. Like writing a quick thought down, like what you did in that at bat, like that's going to be the most authentic what I did in that at bat, right? Versus trying to go back and relive that moment. Like we talk about being in the moment, like that's literally being in the moment. Okay, I struck out on 3 straight fastballs right down the middle because I just didn't swing. Um, Write that down. So it's something as simple as that. So yeah, that's kind of how I would approach the mental game. I think a lot of times we just try to overcomplicate things, right? And I know that can seem like a complicated process, but like once you find what works for you, it really just boils down to just journaling your thoughts. And I think that can be a huge thing, whether that means in life or whether that means in baseball or even in life, right? Like just writing down your thoughts, carving out 3 to 5 minutes a day to just write some thoughts down is huge, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I'd go about the mental game. So please reach out with any questions if you just had any concerns of like how you set it up or how you could go about setting that up. I would love to kind of help you guys out with that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of a Rant, and as always, stay juicy.